Hello everyone and welcome into episode 2 of Weatherwall. If you haven't by chance checked out episode 1, I highly encourage you to do so. It is a great episode. Now, for this episode and the follow-up episode in this series, expect it to be more of a raw, unscripted type of episode where I go over personal stories of two significant weather events in my life. One from my childhood and one from just last year. So let's go ahead and set the stage for this episode. 1 year ago, on April 2nd, 2025, I covered one of the largest tornado outbreaks in Indiana state history with a couple of my great coworkers and friends, along with covering widespread significant wind damage that not only took place here in Indiana, but across areas through the mid-Mississippi Valley as well. That's next on Weatherwall. The lead up to April 2nd, 2025 was characterized by quite a bit of activity. We were already pretty active leading into early April. In fact, we had severe weather issues on the morning of March 15th, March 19th, March 30th. In fact, March 30th, we had the Elite Eight here with Houston versus Tennessee with March Madness. So thankfully that game concluded before the brunt of the severe weather moved through. But still, we've already had a number of significant issues with severe weather heading into this point of the year. And of course, with us still staying busy and keeping us on our toes, of course, the best thing that we can do at this point was just to continue to simply stay focused and take it one day at a time. After March 30th, that's when all my attention diverted towards April 2nd. That was a Wednesday last year. And of course, on this particular Sunday night of March 30th, as I got home, I basically was thinking, yeah, Wednesday could be pretty serious, but I still had some question marks. Models are showing a bit of destabilization or unstable air in the atmosphere. From what I had saw in the days leading up to April 2nd, we had CAPE values showing up of at least 2,000 joules per kilogram. That is the measurement of CAPE overall. And I think I saw some miles pushing 3,000. I'm not totally sure on that, but definitely more than enough instability, especially considering the amount of extreme wind shear being modeled overall. From the looks of it, we had a robust 100 plus knot mid-level jet coming in overall from the northwest that was going to skirt by us. Its influence would be powerful into our region and to our southwest as well. Now, we already had elevated severe threats for Wednesday by Monday, March 31st. Matter of fact, and you'll see the graphics on your screen there as well, we already had seen a day 5 enhanced risk be put out on Saturday morning of March 29th, and that enhanced risk ballooned across all of Indiana by Sunday. On Monday, March 31st, the risk didn't change too much, but all of Indiana was in a level 3 to 5 severe risk. And of course, then by Tuesday, April 1st, the level 4 moderate comes out into portions of southern Indiana. We don't see day 2 moderates often. In fact, they don't occur much at all. We actually once went 4 years without one, from 2018 to 2022. So it just goes to show you the more rarity that they, of course, propose in general. The threat was elevated for all hazards, especially tornado and wind. The hail threat was going to be maximized with any potential discrete supercells that could fire off potentially ahead of the main line in general. We knew that we were going to have a squall line of some sort. That was being modeled pretty well, actually. However, the larger uncertainty lied with any cells. So that leads me to this. I was a little weary heading into April 2nd. Through that Monday and Tuesday, I was kind of like, yeah, I think we could have some big trouble, but models were, for whatever reason, some of them were backing off on unstable air amounts, but I thought, that's kind of strange. I don't want to buy into it too much. That regression kind of confused me a little bit, but still, I wanted to stand firm in my spot of just not being lackadaisical or being like, oh, it's just, yeah, it's trending down if it's going to happen. I wanted to stand my ground and not be bamboozled or anything like that. There's a specific word I'm looking for. I can't quite find it. But anyway, So we knew that we had a potent setup, obviously, and ahead of the line there would be something called a cap. And that's where the question of the cells came in. Would the cap break? A cap is a warm nose type of lid just above us in the atmosphere. Sometimes it's higher up in the mid levels, but typically it's found in the lower levels of the atmosphere that tries to prevent air particles from freely rising into free buoyancy above the cap in general to make thunderstorms grow and become severe. If we were to have a cell form that Wednesday afternoon, it would spell big problems because the environment was more than supportive of strong long track tornadoes and very large hail and some serious damaging wind. So it was like a waiting game. And one thing for me personally as a meteorologist, the one thing that I still sometimes just don't deal with as well, I feel like, is the waiting game. Nobody likes to wait for this stuff to try and evolve in general. People just obviously want to get it over with and be like, hey, we want to know what's going to straight up happen. And is it going to happen with me or is it going to not? It's just one of those things. And so that Tuesday night, I recall just trying to get away from everything, especially the weather side of things, and just hopped on PlayStation here. And usually the night before a more substantial severe risk, I'll do something like that, or I'll just listen to some softer, slower music to kind of just be free of my mind and just try to relax, because obviously you want to be as focused, as mentally charged as possible for the day of said event. Wednesday morning, wake up and am shocked to see there's a high risk south of Indiana. Storm Prediction Center forecaster Chris Boyles issued this high risk. For those who don't know, he's been working there for at least, I think, 15, 20 years, maybe longer than that. I'm not totally sure. But the thing is, a lot of people were shocked. There was a lot of comments of what in the world is going on? Why is this happening? Including myself. I was confused as well, but I was like, look, I expect the moderate to move more north at some point, the level 4 to 5 risk. By the way, high risk is level 5 out of 5. That's very rare. You only see those about once a year or so. Now, still to maintain focus, and that's exactly what I did. Did not change that at all. Was not deterred by anything. So I just went off my day and just did what I could, taking care of some housekeeping items around here before I went in later that afternoon. I was going to be in from 5 p.m. until whenever the storms left the area, so it could have been way after midnight or could have been before. It just depended on how things evolved. Also, too, we had a flash flood risk that night. The squall line just behind the main component of it was going to be training across the area, so we're forecasting 1 to 3 inches of rain as well, which was the kickstart of a extended flash flood risk that ended up becoming pretty significant, unfortunately. We had gotten several inches of rain. We got dumped into the weekend, that particular weekend, my birthday weekend, unfortunately. But anyway, back to April 2nd. Through the morning hours, again, I just did my thing with trying to get people updated on social media and keeping an eye on trends with models, and then just trying to get in a mini workout if possible. I also like to do a workout before severe weather. I always feel like I gain a mental edge from it, and I feel more sharp and ready to go. So I did that, not as long as usual, and it wasn't as involved as usual. And I don't try to make it too strenuous because obviously you don't want to be too tired. But as we got to just after noon, I went ahead and, of course, took our dog outside and was planning on staying out there for, of course, per usual, few minutes, maybe 10 minutes at most, just to kind of get outside for a little bit and just kind of look up at the clouds. And you could see the different directions of the clouds they were moving in, the sheer loft. I mean, it was pretty wild to see. It's actually quite the sight when you look at that stuff. You could tell where the low-level jet was that was streaming to the northeast, and then, of course, the upper-level winds aloft, too. We had 3 different cloud decks. You can even see the cap with the cirrus cloud deck in general, too. So the cap was obviously there through the lunch hour. And at that point, that was when the Storm Prediction Center included all of central Indiana in the level 4 risk with a 15% significant tornado hatch. This is, of course, before the Storm Prediction Center just recently revamped their SIG stuff and different SIG levels, the conditional intensity group stuff, that I'm still not a big fan of, if we're being honest, but that's a whole another story for a whole another day. But the thing is, this was significant because this marked the highest tornado threat that I had now been under at this point since May 22nd, 2019, when I was on the storm chase trip of Ball State in Oklahoma. That was the day that we had deadly tornadoes in Missouri that included Golden City and Jefferson City. Jefferson City especially was a bad one. I remember that very well. I will never forget that. That was like at 11:30 at night, which was scary. But either which way, at that point, it was kind of like, okay, yeah, we're in trouble. We're in trouble. And I'm not sure why I felt like I was lagging a little bit on having more concern. But at the same time, too, I think part of it is becoming more of a seasoned meteorologist. You have the ability to not flinch as much with higher risks, but still it's something where you can't be immune to it. If you guys get what I'm saying, like, you can't be not emotional with it, but at the same time too, you have to know that there's many people that rely on you to do your job correctly and to be on point with everything. So I do better at times with not flinching as much with these risks. Several years ago was a little bit different, but I wouldn't say I was like so out of control with it. But there's definitely a noticeable difference. Even it's crazy to think that even from like 2020, for instance, when we had the March 28th moderate in Illinois and we had the enhanced in Indiana, and I remember saying I haven't felt this uneasy but severe in years. Blah blah blah. I think maybe part of it was just slight paranoia, but it wasn't to where I was like trying to like scare people. But it was just one of those days where you kind of felt like you were going to have severe weather. You just didn't know if you were going to have more to severe thunderstorm warnings or if there were going to be many tornado warnings. It ended up being the former, but still. So I had the dog out with me out back. We were out there way longer than I planned. I was out there for more like 20 minutes as opposed to 5, which, again, I wasn't going to be out there that long, but I remember just staring up at the clouds and then just trying to think about the setup, and then it's like, this is probably one of the things I usually try not to think about, but I started to think about it, that our safety net was running out of time. That is never really a thing you want to feel per se, because again, it goes back to my previous point about maintaining control of not only your emotions but your mindset. Overall, you need to have the psychological strength in a heightened severe risk like this. So the next 4 hours, got ready. I took a very short nap at around 3. Not really a nap. I needed to lay down. I was getting a little tired. I don't know why, which kind of worried me slightly. But I'm like, oh, I really don't understand why I'm feeling like this. But I just need to lay down for a second. And before that, I called my sister. I usually call my sister, especially when there's a risk like this, and I just gave her a heads up, like, hey, look, you need to be aware. It's not impossible for there to be discrete cells that fire off, but we're really focused on the line coming in tonight, which was going to move in around 8:30 p.m., and then it's going to rake through pretty quickly at a fast speed. I also made up some posts and stuff, and one of them was with the 12:30 p.m. risk update. We were talking main timing being between 6 p.m. Wednesday, 1 a.m. Thursday. That was to account for potential earlier arrival, which did not happen, of said line and or discrete cells. So this is a very serious, severe risk if supercells especially get going. One or more of the following is possible. And of course, I had mentioned that briefly, but I'll give you a little bit more key details on what I was being specific with. 70 to 75 plus mile per hour gusts, long track EF3 plus tornado or tornadoes, if that happens. Very large hail, 2 inches plus. The squalling obviously will carry a threat to potentially significant as well. So basically, we were in a loaded gun scenario. Essentially, we were waiting for things to fire. The cells never fired, thankfully. We didn't have a single supercell fire in Indiana. Meanwhile, points south and numerous supercells. Thank goodness Boyles went with the high risk because, and I should have known why he went high risk. One of the reasons why he did was the jet translational speed in terms of the mid-level jet. It traveled, I think, about 750 miles, like the midpoint of the jet streak from like New Mexico to Minnesota, over an 18-hour span from, what was it, 2 a.m. that morning to 8 p.m. that same evening. And that led to a jet translational speed of around 42 knots, which anything 40 knots or higher indicates tornado outbreak potential. That's one of the key components in Broyles' Omega project, which helps try to distinguish better high-risk issuances and stuff. And they've created a risk impact value. I think it's like 4 or higher warrants or something like that. I need to go back and read it, but great research stuff that Broyles does. Broyles deserves every single accolade for that high risk, to be honest. So kudos to him. And, you know, the Storm Prediction Center does do a lot of hard work. Again, although I'm not totally the biggest fan of conditional intensity groups, again, we'll talk about that another day. I'm going to make the rest of this kind of brief. I don't want to try to waste too much more time in this video. Try to keep it under 30 if possible. So, get to work at around 5 and got in at a good time because it helped me get the blog wrote. Ryan was leading. Drew was doing some other stuff as well. I remember Wish had brought Dominoes. They brought a ton of Dominoes, which, God bless Dominoes. That very good pizza. Just want to say that real quick on that. Thank you, Dominoes. I'm not sponsored by Dominoes. Should be. But giving them praise here. I'm just kidding. Anyway, back on track. Tornado watches were being issued. We had tornadoes happening that were pretty significant to our southwest. Lake City, Arkansas was one of the strongest of the day. A high ND of 3 that thankfully did not cause any fatalities. Unfortunately, that changed way later that night. I'll briefly touch it in a second. The squall line was coming in hot. We had numerous tornadoes in Illinois. Right before the line got into Indiana, one of our main digital workers, I think he's like our lead desk assignment editor or something like along those lines. I forgot his position title. Either which way, he's like pretty much like, I consider him our main digital person. Greg came in and talked about there was this massive tornado in Illinois. He was correct because following the post-storm survey, we had a tornado that was up to 3/4 of a mile wide coming into Indiana, into more western Indiana towards like northern Vigo County. That tornado did make it into Vigo County, just north of Terre Haute, but that was our first tornado of the night. But it shrunk considerably before it got into our state. And then the barrage of wind started coming in. My Lord, there's so many warnings that had 70 mile per hour, 80 mile per hour tags on them. 80 mile per hour winds set off wireless emergency alerts on your phone. We had a number of destructive severe thunderstorm warnings that got kickstarted into western Indy. And this was a pretty wild ride. From 8:30 through 11:30, that 3-hour span was pretty intense. But we were so locked in with coverage. Ryan led coverage at the green screen. I drove radar, posted to social media, and I was talking on the air. Drew was behind the scenes figuring out camera options and was showing different cameras and stuff, in-dot cams or other stuff that he could show and mention about any other reports that I may have forgotten about. And we were just a straight-on machine that night. Probably among my most proud moments covering severe weather that night. I walked away I felt grateful for all the work we did. I didn't walk away being like, oh my gosh, we just had a destructive QLCS, tornadoes, this, that. No, not at all. I felt strong after that. Like, we just accomplished the biggest goal in the history of Earth or something. I don't know. But it was incredible with the work we did. That leads to this. So the destructive severe thunderstorm warning got issued at around 9 p.m. or so. I'll play the clip here of when it gets issued.
What were we going to add here?
Okay, we got a dangerous thunderstorm now approaching part of Marion County. So guys, destructive severe thunderstorm warning heading towards the Indy Metro. This is a dangerous situation. If you know anybody that's traveling in Hendricks County, they got to go off the road. Now, of course, the tone of urgency goes up a little bit, but in that moment too, you don't want to scare people. And I just recently went through this whole thing with covering the tornadoes up in northwest Indiana on March 10th, that was a struggle. I will have full video of that coverage at some point in the near future. Stay tuned for that. It's like almost 3 hours long, but it's definitely worth your time watching it. I lost count of how many times I said significant tornado, and I really didn't want to do that the whole way, but every single radar scan was showing strong tornado. Doesn't happen all the time. When it does, sometimes you have to roll with it. But either which way, we had plenty of tornadoes happening south still. Unbeknownst to my knowledge, or yeah, hold on a second. There was another high EF3 in I almost said St. Louis, sorry. Southeast Missouri, although St. Louis has just been getting hit so many times recently, like parts of the town or downtown, like on May 16th. We'll talk about that here in a matter of weeks, actually. So the line gets to Indy. We had an Indiana Pacers game happening against the Charlotte Hornets. We mentioned about that on the air a couple times. And the game ended as the line got towards like the Marion Hendricks County line. I'm thinking to myself, oh my goodness, this isn't a bad time for this. Also, too, that was when the Brownsburg tornado happened. The EF2 that went right through the middle of Brownsburg, the rotation was very, very tight. That was not a good sign. And I remember thinking, oh brother, there's got to be a tornado down, because usually with that kind of signature, it's down. And from that point forward, it was like just intense moment after intense moment with this line. Tornado debris being picked up numerous times from Brownsburg through Carmel, and then a barrage of tornadoes formed in Madison and Delaware counties. One of them passed just north of where I used to live on Ball State's campus at Scheidler Apartments. And the thing about that too is that's where having your geographical knowledge comes into power too. So while we're covering the other destructive severe thunderstorm warnings through the rest of Marion County, including all of Indianapolis and into Hancock County and beyond that through Henry County into Wayne and stuff like that, that we're covering these rotations north in general. And the northern part of the line was also wound up too with the wind, straight line wind. If no tornado, there's definitely some significant wind. We had a wind gust report, I think, of 100 miles per hour up in Eaton, northern Delaware County. I don't know if that got revised to 88. I think it did. Memory serves me correct. But either which way, Ball State got engulfed with it too. They barely missed. They barely dodged a bullet for the second year in a row from tornadoes. They just dodged one with the Winchester cell from March 14th, 2024. And yeah, using that geographical knowledge from when I was at Ball State and the routes I took to get there, I usually took I-69 to 332 for my last semester. 332, you can get on there off of I-69 if you go east towards some of the off-campus apartments, or you're going to shoot them in the stadium for a football game or baseball or whatever, with the baseball games, stuff like that, because the baseball fields are over there too. But I was calling out some of these places on air, and it's like, just, again, being locked in and doing your job to the best of your ability felt so empowering. It was just like, I'm doing it, man. This is what I worked so hard to get to this point, to be in this moment. Not like in the moment, but be on this platform of being a difference maker with Ryan and Drew. That was just like, wow. I don't know what to say about it, but every single time we do it, overall. So once the line got in the far eastern Indiana, we had a number of damage reports coming out. Through this time too, we were following up on a story at the Surla Tablet Distribution Center. They had a collapse there. At least part of the building was heavily damaged. In association with the building being damaged, there was a woman that was trapped in the structure for like roughly 2 hours, I believe. But thankfully, rescue workers were able to free her from the destruction in general, and everyone made it out alive, thankfully, overall. We did have, unfortunately, one post-storm death, which is still very sad. Don't want to forget that ever in general. So, but overall, in Indiana, we came away with 0 tornado fatalities, which is always best case scenario in relation to tornado fatality potential. Unlike March 10th, unfortunately, we had 2 people die in Lake Village, for instance, and yeah, that night definitely hurts for me a little bit. I'm not gonna lie, but the work Ryan, Drew, and I did, profound, absolutely game changing, and we wrapped up by like 11:30, 11:40 or so, and of course, when we got busy doing with the flooding following April 2nd, we had, again, like I said, several inches of rain. Indy picked up like 6 or something like that. Areas south had hit major flood stage. We had like places like Shelbyville near there that were badly flooded. I mean, we're talking areas that were basically overflowed a bit with water. It's just crazy. So the active pattern just didn't stop there. It was the beginning of what was to be an elongated stretch of just very active weather. So yeah, all in all, April 2nd, pretty chaotic night here. Definitely one of the most intense nights, of my life here in central Indiana, especially dealing with severe weather. There were definitely some similarities, in my opinion, to 2006, but that was a different system, and the way that squall line came in was a little bit different with its orientation. But it produced a lot of produced a lot of widespread wind damage, but it didn't produce nearly as many tornadoes. We had 23 tornadoes in Indiana on the night of April 2nd, 2025, which ties for 5th largest outbreak in state history with March 31st, 2023. And yeah, we have been very active tornado-wise the last couple of years here in Indiana, and this year has been no different. We've been pretty active to start, and I'm hoping that we calm things down a bit and we can lead to a well below normal year, but only time will tell with that one. So thank you guys for tuning in for this episode. I appreciate it as always. Episode 3 will cover a significant severe weather event I went through in my childhood back in 2006. I can't believe it's been 20 years since this event, but definitely stay tuned for that. You don't want to miss it. I'll try to get it out tomorrow at some point, and if not, it's definitely coming out on Friday, so just hang tight with that one, and thank you guys for always watching this stuff, and stay tuned for more of Weatherwall. And on one final note, your local forecast is next.